International Men's Day. Yeah, it's a privilege to be here today. I thank you all for being with us. We have an interesting discussion ahead of us, and I have an interesting panel to discuss some of those issues with us. And men have bad reputation sometimes. We're either treated as people who are unbalanced or immature, or we have deficiencies in some way or other. But we want to break some of that stigma and discuss some of the issues that we deal with as men. So please bear with us, tune in, and let's hear how this conversation goes. I think the panel has already been introduced by name, but I want to give each one of them just a minute to just tell us what it is that is on their heart today, what brings them to our panel this afternoon, so that we can get the conversation started. I'll start with you, Dan.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. As you have been told, my name is Dan Matakaya. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm here in this panel because I believe that being a survivor, I'm better off to talk about violence against men than any other person. So thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. People are too quiet. The meal was too heavy. My name is James Mwathi. I am a mental health practitioner. I am a psychologist. I am an addictions counselor. I work at a facility called the Retreat Rehabilitation Center. We are a sister company to Chiromo Medical Center. I am here to just probably discuss and decipher some of the myths, some of the reasons why men do what they do, and who we are and why we are the way we are. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Sitati Wasilwa, an economist, as well as a youth leader at Kenya YMCA. So majorly on this particular panel, I'll be sharing insights regarding things to do with maybe mental health and probably things to do with the socialization and enculturation process, basing on the various programs that we run here as Kenya YMCA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now that you have the mic, Sitati, let me start with you. You do a lot of work with young men as part of the YMCA.
Yes, yes.
What are the issues that young men are dealing with today?
From the outset, I have to say that one particular issue that is prevalent among the young people is, of course, mental health. And mental health is broad. I mean, it encompasses things like depression, stress, and many others. Apart from that, the other resultant effects of maybe the mental health, you have maybe drug and substance abuse. That's not something new. It's something which happens in our society. And then apart from that, you also have things to do generally with, unhealthy sexual behaviors. We've witnessed, we talk about teenage pregnancies, mostly looking at the teenage mothers. But I'm meant to understand, even from the evidence, and a few young men whom maybe we've dealt with, a good number, they also, maybe you have the teenage fathers, so we just talk about the teenage mothers, teenage fathers, and then you also have extremely young fathers, maybe in their early 20s. And then apart from that, generally the social pressures of life, things to do with unemployment. If it is not unemployment, then looking for all means necessary to earn some form of income for survival. So I think to me those are some of the fundamental issues that young men are grappling with in our society today. Yeah.
James, you want to chime in?
When I hear the question, who is the young man today, a lot of things run through my mind. who are we talking about? Are we talking about the guy who is still at home with the mother, what we want to call, or what has been quote unquote referred to as the Kababa generation? Are we talking about that guy who is probably in high school, facing the challenges of trying to figure out what is manhood all about? Are we talking about that guy who is joining college and trying to form an identity and coming into peer pressure and trying out stuff, trying out dating, trying out drugs? Are we talking about that guy who has just finished college or campus and is trying to find a social economic footing, and at the same time trying to date and competing with a 60-year-old for the same woman? Are we talking about that newly married guy with the first child? These are questions that is too broad-based, because all these demographics will at one point or the other have their own unique challenges. So probably even to the audience, I would throw back that question: who is the young guy we're talking about?
So you're saying that when we talk about the boy child, that word is thrown around a lot. And what I'm hearing you say is that the boy child is not just a small kababa, that there's a whole spectrum in terms of age, in terms of experience, in terms of many other factors that determine who the boy child is, right? And when you say we are helping or dealing with the boy child, it's not just one thing, because we're not talking about one person. We're talking about a huge spectrum of people. Am I understanding you correctly?
You capture what I'm saying, because again, and I'm coming from the point of view of socialization. How we treat and bring up and socialize and culture the 5-year-old, how the messaging that they internalize will determine how they go through high school, will determine how they'll go through campus, and ultimately the kind of man who they become. Yeah. So when we talk about the boy child or the young man, we need to look a bit further down the line than just the misbehaving 27-year-old. Yeah.
That's an interesting. We're going to get deeper into that, but before we do, I want to bring Dan back on focus. You have a very interesting story, Dan, about domestic violence. Do you want to give us your experience briefly?
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll do it briefly. My case is so unique. This happened in 2013, on 21st September. That day, I was working the whole night. I was on a night shift. As I've told you, I'm a police officer. When I came to the house at around 5:30 in the morning, I was so tired. So I went direct to the bed to sleep. My ex-wife was in the house, and a few minutes later, she woke up and poured sulfuric acid on my face as I was sleeping. So when I woke up, my face was so burning. So I was trying to get some water to dissolve the burns. At first, I never knew if that was an acid. I thought it was cooking oil, alikuwa amechemusha, because it was burning. The burning was so severe. So when I stepped on the floor, I felt a shock. She had gone further and connected to electricity, and poured some water on the floor. She wanted me to be electrocuted in the house. So luckily enough, during that confusion, I just screamed for help, and my colleagues came for my rescue. I was rushed to the hospital. The first aid was done. I started seeing. I walked to the ward, but the pain was so severe. I was given some drugs, but the pain still so severe. injected me because he saw I was so struggling a lot with the pain. So when I woke up, I found that I couldn't see. It was tough. I was transferred now to Kenyatta National Hospital. That's where I underwent a comprehensive treatment, going through surgeries after surgeries, through over 15 surgeries while I was at KNH. And during the time when I was at Kenyatta National Hospital, my only prayer was for the restoration of my sight. But I remember 4 months later, the doctor came to me and told me that, "Oh, Dan, we are sorry. We have tried to restore your sight, but we couldn't manage it. So you need to accept yourself, you accept the situation, and you move on with life." Okay, it wasn't easy for me because I was praying for the restoration of my sight. So at that time, I started contemplating suicide while at KNH. And luckily enough, not lucky really, I was on the 9th floor, Ward 9B. So when I was trying to figure out this way to do it, the only option that came into my mind was now to throw myself from the 9th floor to the ground, then it will be done. But then I was still asking myself, since I was not seeing, what if there's a roof next to the window? I throw myself, then I fall on the roof. What kind of damage will I have caused myself? So I stepped back and started I started to figure out the best way I'll do it. But one day at around 2 a.m., I was just chatting, just talking with another patient who was my friend. And this guy just told me that, "Dan, I wish I could be you." I laughed. I thought that this guy was going crazy because at that time, I was just contemplating suicide. I was tired. So I went ahead and asked him, "Why are you wishing that you could be me?" And honestly, he told me that, "Not seeing, you have scars, but this is disfigured. But one thing you need to appreciate is that you are sure you'll come out of this facility alive." That message touched me, and to believe that that was a godsend, because that was my turning point. That message gave, and I sat down and started thinking about how grateful and how worth this life is. At that time, I just saw myself worth, because I just wanted someone who was not my family, who was not my friend, to just tell me, "Dan, you look good." And that was what I was missing. That guy came and did it to me. So that was my turning point. And I also changed my prayer and asked God to get me out of the hospital so that I may dedicate my life to Him. I was discharged after 6 months in a fair condition. And while in the hospital, I came across many men who gave up. Others even died. Some of whom walikuwa wamechomwa na maji, wengine stima. And I felt sorry because I could see how they were suffering. Some of them were the one who were helping me because I was not seeing. Some of those patients we lost were the one who were there, who were supporting me in that hospital. So I felt that I can do something, because I feel whenever you see justice, take it upon yourself to fix the injustice. Don't wait for the government. Don't wait for someone else. So I took it upon myself and said to myself that, "Dan, you can fix this injustice. You can fix this." Because many men in our society, they are facing a lot of issues. in relationship, in marriage, in finances, but they don't want to open up. They don't want to come out and talk. That's when I registered the non-profit, just to give men a safe space, just to talk about what they are experiencing. Because the society has labeled men as perpetrators when it comes to violence. The same society has never accepted that men too are also victims of violence. Even with our education, we still believe that men cannot be a victim of domestic violence. So that's where we get wrong. And even men, we are our own enemies. We don't support our brothers. Whenever a man comes out and talk about what he's facing, we laugh at him. We don't support him. We laugh at him. The society stigmatizes against him, and then this man feel like, yeah, it's over. It's over, because the same people you are expecting help from, they are the same people wenye wanakumaliza zaidi. So we are doing so. We are helping men, and to me, I feel good because I feel that this was my purpose. As I said earlier, each and every one of us has gone through painful experiences. And I usually ask people, what has your painful experience benefit? Has it benefited someone? I know it can. With that painful experience, you can reach out, you can support someone else, you can help someone, you can save life. So me, I'm lucky because it gave me a purpose. The painful experience that I went through gave me a purpose. And the purpose was to free people from their concerns, to free men from their concerns, to help them, to be a voice to the voiceless. Because I felt that there's a gap within our society. We don't have anyone to talk about our issues. We don't have anyone we can reach out to. Even we don't have even friends we can share freely of what we are going through. And we have decided to develop coping mechanism, which you find men are drinking a lot, that being one of the coping mechanisms, because those bars is where we get comfort. In our houses, we don't get comfort, but we don't want to come out and talk and resolve some of the conflicts that are in our houses. So it's something that is affecting men, and but I believe we are fixing it because many people are coming out and just talking about the issues facing men. Yeah.
I know that topic is a very important one, the issue of coping mechanisms. I'm grateful that your story is one of hope, that you've come out of this not just alive, but you're actually providing a platform and hope for other men to come through this. You touched a bit about coping mechanisms, and maybe I can bring James back in again and just ask about that. You know, in the work that you do, you deal with a lot of rehabilitation and addiction and that kind of thing. So maybe tell us about that. What are men doing to cope with the issues and the challenges that they face from your experience?
Again, unfortunately, for most men, we are not equipped with healthy coping mechanisms. Again, remember when we're growing up, we are told, do not show your tears, suck it up, be a man. What that does simply is leave you alone without solutions. When you're faced with situations that you're not able to deal with, then you just have to find your own coping mechanisms. And unfortunately, again, most of the unhealthy coping mechanisms, and by this I mean things like alcohol use, substance use, they are seen as macho, they are seen as manly. So most men will revert or go back to substance use to deal with their issues. Yeah. So you find that probably, and that's again, I'll keep on going back, because addictions and unhealthy coping mechanisms do not develop at once. It's a process, it's a habitual thing. Yeah. So you find like as far back as high school, this young man has had conflict with teachers or with the parents. Again, they're trying to form their own identity and they face situations they can't deal with. What do the other boys tell them? Take one beer and problems will go away. So we've started internalizing that messaging, that negative messaging, that you can deal with life's issues through unhealthy coping mechanisms. So slowly you find that over time, and I'm encouraged by his story, yeah? Because it would have been very easy for him to fall into depression. It would have been very easy for him to actually consider and actualize that suicide. It would have been very easy for him to get out of hospital, get hopeless, and turn to the bottle. Because these are the mechanisms that we as men are made to believe by society that that's how we deal with situations. Yeah.
And they don't work, James, do they?
They don't work. They don't work because ultimately, it's a self-defeating cycle. Yeah. Because, for example, and for the easiest example, let's use alcohol. You will start what we call self-medicating with the alcohol, soothing your pains, trying to deal with the issues that you're going through. But the more habitual and the more dependent you're becoming on the substance, the more it's causing problems to you. Yeah? So you find that you're jumping from one problem and it's being made worse by the alcohol intake. Yeah? And after a while, you find the original problems are still there, but also you've got other problems, and stigma has followed you, society frowns on you, and again we keep on asking, what kind of a man is this? Why can't you just stop? Why, if you're drinking this much and you're seeing the negative effects, why are you not simply stopping? Yeah.
So I'm seeing like a continuum here, where from a very young age, the whole boy-child dynamic, the kababa, like you said, the kababa dynamic, and the boys are coddled or they're not given the reality of life. They get to a certain age and are not able to cope with issues in life. They encounter difficulties, very difficult, even unique situations like what Dan has gone through. And instead of being able to deal with it, they get into unhealthy coping mechanisms, which don't solve the problem. They just dull your pain for a bit. And then you end up adding your problems, adding an addition to the many other problems that you have, depression, etc. So it's a cycle. The boys are slowly circling the drain as they get older. And we'll get more into sort of what we can do about that a bit later. Did you have something before we go on?
I want to add a paradox. As all this is going on, unfortunately, as all this is going on, and one of the speakers said it here earlier, we are empowering the girl child. Yeah? We are empowering the girl child. So at the end of the day, while the man is drowning in alcohol, the woman is progressing. And then we ask ourselves, what are men doing about it? Why are men being left behind? Yeah? And we get into this situation where there is a husband who is not able to take care of his family, and society stigmatizes them while uplifting the woman for taking care of the family, which again makes the man more vulnerable to substance use and other now mental conditions. Yeah? And again, we keep on wondering what's happening to our men. Yeah?
It's a whole, it almost seems like a conspiracy, yeah? If we're thinking like that. Let me bring you back in, Sitati. So we were talking earlier and you talked about the whole idea of socialization. Maybe you can build up on that in light of what we're talking about.
Well, in terms of the socialization process, especially in reference to young men in our society today, I think social media has, has changed the dynamics or has altered the way we view all this kind of process. Because for once, socialization was primed as, the fellows or the individuals whom someone interacts with closely. But I think even with social media, now you are free to, get information, to consume content from whichever point, from whichever reference or platform, right? So in terms of that, we are seeing a society whereby for the men, either their vulnerabilities are being exposed, That's mostly for the young men whom I've observed. Or we are seeing all this kind of toxicity, whether from associated with masculinity or femininity, on the other hand. In addition to that, I strongly believe, just like my colleague James has mentioned, that empowering one side of the society and leaving the others, and in this case, focusing too much on the girl child or on the women, and then excluding the men, at the end of the day, we are building still an imbalanced society. So I believe that even with the aspect of social media coming in, we are seeing all manner of, you know, whatever they call feminism or whatnot, which, in my opinion, from a sociological background, very positive thing. But now when the toxicity angle comes in, and then we are trying to demean the role of men in the society. I mean, to be honest enough, I believe a few years from now, and I think it's happening, we are going to have a very unstable society, in my opinion, because the role of the man is being denigrated, you know, to the periphery. So I believe that needs a kind of holistic approach to ensure that as much as of the culture, the men or the boys are not left behind. But again, to touch on that, the toxicity aspect of masculinity in terms of socialization, then it means that men who engage in those kind of behaviors or embrace such kind of thoughts or thinking, then it forces us, or it gets us to a point whereby we are not even maybe able to offer the right kind of leadership, maybe to our families, or even to interact the best way possible with our peers, whether male or female. So I believe that that needs a very, very reasoned judgment to see that the kind of socialization that you're having, not just physically, but even through the digital platforms, women or boys and girls are able to coexist in a very positive way.
And I have to ask this because, you know, so far the image being portrayed is almost like, you know, men are victims, that, you know, all of this is the world conspiring to put men a certain way and all that. Is there any responsibility that we have as men? You know, when we use a word like toxic masculinity, you know, that's something that's coming from within and coming out. Isn't there a certain point at which you say, you know, as a man, you need to man up and do certain things or behave in a certain way? Is there any space or room for that, for us as men to take responsibility for what's happening to us? What do you think?
Of course, and before we come to that, just briefly, I think there are certain non-negotiables, you know, as a man. There are certain non-negotiables. Not that they are toxic in essence, but I believe there are some things which nature, the way it is organized. I mean, sometimes we want to go against nature, but that's why maybe you could be seeing some of the repercussions, even with the human society. But I believe strongly that men have a clear-cut role, which maybe it is being assumed, or rather it has been assumed over the years, that people are growing up maybe with absentee fathers, dads, you know, or just generally the lack of, you know, role models or father figures in the lives of the young men. So I believe we need to retrace ourselves. We need to reconfigure and try to find out how we are able to, you know, uplift, hold the hands of the other young men, especially the ones who are vulnerable, who lack the father figures in the society. And that's why even we have organizations such as not just YMCA Kenya, but all the rest which are represented here. And I believe through those kind of collaborations and partnerships, then we can be able to build a society that is progressive?
You want to chime in, Jay?
On the same, the 2 minutes. One of the biggest problems, again, is that as men, we don't tell each other the truth. That's one of our biggest undoing. We will want to present to each other this big picture that everything is perfect. Even when you know that your fellow man, your fellow friend is drowning, I'd rather go and buy this guy 2 beers than buy for him shopping. Yeah? I'd rather tell him that in my house I am the one who talks. Madame does not talk. While in actual sense, maybe you consult in your house. So we are not being truthful to each other. And it's causing considerable harm to our fellow men. Yeah? So that's one thing. The other thing that I've realized is that, again, due to the fact that we've lacked role models, some of us have taken the easy way out, and it's easier for us to play the victim card. Yeah? We fail to take responsibility for our actions and our lives, and we want to blame our upbringing, we want to blame our absentee fathers, we want to blame everything else so that we do not take responsibility. So those are 2 challenges that I find within our manfolk ourselves. Yeah.
It's a good point, James, and I want to bring Dan in again. And your story is so inspiring because you went through a really bad experience that was not of your own making. I mean, it's not like you were drunk and you fell into a fire or anything like that. This is something that was done to you, and despite that, you were able to, through a lot of self-doubt and many other issues, you were still able to pull yourself up and not only stand back on your 2 feet, but provide a platform for other men to come up. So I think that's a perfect example of resilience that we don't see very often. And I wanted to ask you this, based on your experience, based on your work as a police officer, what do we see out there in terms of resilience with men? Are men resilient? Are we able to bounce back from stuff, or do we just wallow and get depressed and start drinking and become alcoholics? What kind of resilience do we see around from your experience?
I can tell you for sure, many men don't have the resilience. The way the panelists have said, we take advantage and we play a victim card. Because after going through certain experience, many of them, they are unable to handle the situation, and then they get into other bad things like drunk, wengine wanaingia kwa madawa. Then that goes to a point whereby even men commit suicide. Many of them, I know of many, even my colleagues, who suicide because they are unable to handle the situation at hand. And I can as well blame this to our society. Culturally, the way we have been groomed up by the society, that men don't cry, men, we don't need to show our emotions. That makes us even not to reach out for the support. Even the institutions that are there to support us, in fact, even the police, and I'm sorry to say so, some of these cases, we don't have trained personnel to handle cases to do with men. Like in case, for the case of gender or even sodomy, whenever someone, a man or a boy, come and reports, we don't have that proper mechanism or how we can help this individual. We tend to send him away or tell him go and do this instead of supporting and holding his hand and to make sure he gets justice. Even the hospitals, whenever a man goes there, maybe to seek for medical attention for some of these issues whereby they have been abused by their loved ones, we still have some stigma against men, even within our institutions. So even for men getting into depression, I think what we need to do is we need to look at our institutions and to find a proper support mechanism whereby we can offer to these individuals in order to help these men.
We'll come to solutions just before we wrap up. But I want to ask if there's anybody who has a question to anyone in the panel. Just prepare your questions. Are there any questions so far? Anyone?
Know from your understanding, what is the natural role of men or something to do with that? I'm really interested to know what is that to you, because you mentioned it as a belief, something you believe in, that we are struggling with today because of we are trying to go against it. So I would really love to know from you, what is that natural role of a man?
Maybe we can take the second question.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
My name is George from Chiroma Mental Health Hospital. My question goes to Dan. I'd like to know if, in the current state, like if there are any other government agencies that actually helped him when he was abused, and if they worked with him through that path, because most of the time we have like feeder, like organizations that actually help women when they're going through domestic violence or anything to do with that. Is there something in the government or even in the private sector that actually did hold his hand to,
Support structures for domestic violence?
Yeah, specifically for men that he knows of.
Fair question.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Chris Gweth. I'm from Transform Nations. And my question is on men's resilience. And I'm wondering, is it that men are not naturally resilient, emotionally resilient, or is it that men undergo a lot of challenges and yet there is no support or system support to help them overcome them? Yeah, thank you.
Anyone in particular? Or maybe James can handle that because he's the one who doesn't have a question. So we'll start with Sitati. We'll just take in that order. Sitati, and then we'll come to Dan, and then we'll come to James.
All right. Gentleman, I've forgotten his name. He's a common figure. He's asked about what I meant or my view regarding what I mentioned earlier on the natural, maybe laws or order of the society, which, in my opinion, from a sociological point of view, could be the origin of all this kind of social chaos that we are witnessing. What I meant is that we are living in a society, the kind of chaos that we are seeing at the family level, others are explicit, others implicit, but I believe that the man must be able to provide leadership in a family level. And I think, in my opinion, yes, some families are doing well, some men are doing well, but I think if we are living in a society whereby the rates of, well, it's not a must for someone to get married, I have to make that clear, but I think in a society whereby we are living and there are high rates of divorce, in a society where we are living and, single parenthood, apart from those ones which are caused by natural causes, for example, death, I think there's a problem to do with the leadership, in my opinion. One of the speakers during the first session, Madam Faith Nashipaya, mentioned something to do with the value system. That in terms of the legacy for the man, it should not just be about, you know, trying to figuring out how much money, whatever cars I'm driving, what homes I'm building, but what is the value system that is being built? So it could be something that is inherent, I don't know. It could be something that is creeping amongst us, I can't tell. But what I'm certain is that most families, or a good number of families, maybe the lack of role models within the families, I mean, that could be the cause of all this kind of social tension that you're witnessing in families. So in my opinion, precisely, is that the role of men, as per the natural laws of human nature, in my opinion, is to provide leadership. That doesn't mean, and I have to make it clear, that women cannot offer leadership at the family level. But I think one thing we forget when we are having discussions is that human beings are animals at the end of the day. When you look at the animal societies, I mean, it's based on a certain laws of nature or order. So in my opinion, we are not anyway different that much. So I think the men need to provide more leadership. I think that's my honest opinion, yeah.
Fair enough. I know that's a discussion that can go back and forth for hours. It's a good thing this is International Men's Day, and so we say what we believe as men, so that's okay. Dan, tell us, what support structures are there in civil society, in the public sector, in the private sector, to help men with domestic violence?
Okay, thank you so much. I can say, honestly, I never received any support. And that's why I felt there's a gap within our society. That's why I registered this organization, just to create that platform and to offer the support, to be a support system to this individual. Because I went through this painful event experience, but no one was there to come and just hold my hand, apart from family and few friends who stood with me. So we still have some gaps in our society, and it's upon us to join our hands and to be of great support to one another.
Maybe this is something I can ask the floor. Do we know of any organizations that help men in situations of domestic violence, either legally or professionally or psychologically, or even in terms of recovery, financially and otherwise? So I don't know if there's any. Does anyone know of any organizations that help men going through domestic violence? Anyone? No? Wow, that's sad. Huh? That's quite unfortunate. Yeah, there's definitely a gap there. Okay, James?
Are men less resilient now? I believe the question is looks at twofold, then and now. And my answer would be resilience is not inborn. Resilience is built, yeah? And resilience is built considering or directly proportional to several things. Number one, support. As this male grows up, what kind of support structures are there for him to deal with whatever adversities of life that they come across? The more support structures that he receives, the more resilient he might be. The other thing that might build resilience is life's experiences and the lessons they are in. Yeah? The more life teaches you as you grow up, the more resilient you start becoming to stuff that happen around you. And also our worldview. Yeah? How do you perceive the world? Because your worldview will again shape how resilient you are. There is somebody, for example, who, let's use Dan's example. There's somebody who will go through domestic violence and internalize the feeling that they are worthless, they are not capable, hopelessness will crop in, and they will go down the destructive path. But another person, like Dan, will take this as a life lesson and learn from it. Yeah. So it all depends on how we view the world and the support and the life experiences and how we take the lessons therein.
Maybe I can dwell on that just for a minute, James. So, you know, we come from a background as adults in today's world where we believe that men are supposed to be these tough, macho guys who can deal with anything. But the reality is apparently not the same. Where is the disconnect? Because if in my mind I believe men are supposed to behave in a certain way, then why isn't that happening?
Again, at the end of the day, man is human. We need to start from there. Man is human. Man will experience emotions. Man will experience feelings. Yeah. Now, if you grow up being told that as a man, you mask your feelings. As a man, you do not cry. As a man, you internalize the messaging that you cannot ask for help. And that is the problem. Yeah. Because once you internalize that you cannot ask for help, what this simply means is when you are pushed to the wall and there is no other way out, you will go into destructive habits. Yeah? Because again, remember, you're dealing with everything alone and no man is an island. Yeah? We need each other for survival. What you know, I might not know. But if I don't say I don't know, I will never learn. But we grow up being told, man, you should be able to solve all your problems. And that is where the problem starts. Yeah.
So the sentiment makes sense that as a man, you should be able to deal with your issues, you should be able to solve issues. But the problem is that there is no education as to how to do that. And that's what leads men down this negative cycle of depression and addiction and all these bad practices, is what I'm hearing.
Again, I'll give a very basic example of the society we are coming from versus the society that we are in. If you look at the African traditional way of life, the boy child was a child of the community. He could be disciplined by the neighbor, the pastor, everybody in the community. Yeah? And there were systems in place of how to transition this man from one stage to the other. What that did to the young man was they learned from different spectrums and society on different ways of dealing with things. Compare that to our today environment where we have built walls, yeah, and we are only getting information either from our immediate family, which might be defective. So if that information is defective, then it means we are getting defective information, or we are getting, from what my friend Sitati says, we are getting information from social media. Again, social media is fake. Everybody wants to present their selves at their best. So when you see people partying and people dressing nicely and you can't afford that, again, it starts creating the feeling of worthlessness. I am not good enough. There's something I am not doing that other people are doing. But then it's a fake life. Again, look at it from the aspect of bullying, for example. We are seeing very, very young kids committing suicide because they posted a picture on IG and they were told they are fat. But because as a society we are too busy running around life, nobody is there to tell them it is okay to be who you are. So they internalize that message from strangers, and it again causes problems. So this is the same problem that we are facing as men. Yeah.
I'm going to ask each of you to just, in a minute, just give us your final shot. We've talked about some of the issues. What is the way forward? What do we do about these situations? And what good thing comes out of all of this? Briefly, 1 minute. Start with you, Sitati.
Thank you. I believe the way forward, in my opinion, needs to focus on responsibility, whether you're talking about collective responsibility or individual responsibility. So this can be further broken down into, responsibility at the family level, which I believe that, you see, once the basic unit of social, economic, political organization, the society, is in disarray, everything else falls apart. So the family institution, extremely important. And of course, the friendships. We have to take responsibility for our friends as men, like what James mentioned. You see your fellow man suffering, I mean, don't buy him 2 beers and sink him further into, to the bottomless pit, but try to help that fellow out. And then I think also in terms of responsibility with, for us to be mentally fit, I believe even physically we need to be fit. So all those kind of, responsibilities at a collective level, at an individual level, rests with us. I think with that we can be able to change the society.
Number one, it is important to understand that it is okay not to be okay. That's a message that we need to give the boy child. It is okay not to be okay. We are only human. Yeah. It is okay to express your feelings. It is okay to cry. It is okay to say, I don't know. Yeah. Because once we are able to do that, then we open up the space for them to come and say, I am struggling in this area. That is number one. Number two, we need to stop the blame game. We are too busy blaming each other on why the boy child is how he is, that we are losing the bigger picture. Yeah. We are blaming single mothers for bringing up boys. We are blaming absentee dads for, we are blaming everybody and nobody. Yeah. So we need to stop the blame game and focus on what is important. How do we nurture this young man? Yeah. I have utmost respect for organizations that are taking it upon themselves to nurture a young man. Man Enough is a program that I have had numerous times. I've sent people there, and I can see it does wonders. Yeah. I wish we could have 100 of them. It would transform these people. Then parenting. I think it's time we went back to proper parenting. Today we are bribing our children. Yeah. We think that if I give him 100 bob, he will be responsible. If I do this, at the end of the day, we are not parenting. We are bribing our children and too busy out there looking for a comfortable life for them. And ultimately, that comfortable life sends them to rehab. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Dan, last comment.
Okay, thank you so much. One thing I would urge men is to know who they are. Self-awareness is key. You must know your strengths, your weaknesses, your limitation, and you know your worth. Because that's the basis where you can build resilience. And then number two, we are too busy as men. We are too busy with our businesses. We are too busy with our work. But we don't have time for ourselves. We need to have time for ourselves. We need to take a day off just to reflect, to analyze our life. Just switch off your phone for a day. Just reflect on your life. Understand what you want. And then whenever there's an issue, let's seek professional services. Let's not go to our friend for help. Let's just seek professional services. That way we'll win it. And then I want to urge all those men who are suffering. I know in our society, we don't have even genuine friends to reach to. As the Shieshie Foundation, 5 months ago, we launched a toll-free number after realizing that cases of domestic violence has escalated. So we launched a toll-free number, which is 1196, whereby men can call and get the help of professional and accredited counselors. Any time of the day, any time of the night, just call this number. Your confidentiality is surely highly assured. Call this number. You get the help of a professional counselor. And then let's join our hands to make the society a safer space. Let's reach out to our friends. When you see your friend is not even calling you, is silent, just reach out to him and ask him what is happening. Maybe that way you'll be of a great help to someone's life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. 1196, that's the number. If you have any issues, please put that number out. call the number if you have anything you want to talk about, anyone who you know needs help, give them that number, 1196. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the panelists. Let's give them a hand. They've done really well. And at this point, I want to hand back the program to our MC.